We're grateful that you are here with us today. And with that, I am pleased to introduce Bill George and moderator Gail Ober, who is the president of the George Family Foundation.
Thank you so much. And I'm really grateful to Multiversity for putting on this webinar for so many people, or 500 people. It's a privilege to have a chance to talk to you. And we're here in a time of coronavirus. I think back about through my long lifetime, and this is the most serious crisis of my lifetime. It goes beyond the Vietnam War, the terrors of the Twin Towers falling on September 11th, even beyond the financial crisis of September 2008, when so many banks went bankrupt and everyone was afraid. Because this brings into sharp focal point our human health. Many, many people have died all over the world. It's an invisible virus. But I think more importantly, this is a time when we must come together and lead. And so I want to speak to you as individual leaders today. I'm going to call on you to step up and lead. You know, you don't have to be at the top. You don't have to have a big title to lead. You can lead right where you are, right in place, and step up and really help people. And I think you'll see in a situation like this who the real leaders are, the informal leaders that don't have the titles, that really see what needs to be done, and then they go do it. They don't wait for anyone to tell them, they just go do it. So I want to inspire you about that. I want to frame it around a book that I wrote 2009, but totally updated to the current time, around 7 lessons for leading in crisis. And kind of address those with some modern day leaders and see what are they doing to lead in this crisis. And so if you would just put up the chart with the seven lessons, if you would, for us briefly. So these are the lessons I'm going to be covering for you individually, and I'll illustrate each of these, and then we'd love to get your questions so we can get some time going on them. So let's go to the first one, which is face the reality of the crisis and its implication. You know, the hardest thing to do when something comes at you and you don't really understand it is to face that reality. It's not something you want to see. You know there's going to be a lot of pain. It's going to throw you off kilter, and everything's going to change. But I think this is the time when real leaders step up and say, okay, here are the implications. You have to even look at worst case. Could we go out of business? Could this be our last opportunity? Could we die? Could my employees be really hurt by this? Could I lose all my customers? Could I shut down my restaurant, never be able to reopen it? These are the kind of painful things you have to face in reality, and then think through the implications and think through who is affected by the crisis. Someone who did that really well, I thought, was Mary Barra of General Motors when she first came in. She's one of my former students. She got to be CEO of General Motors. She brought him out of bankruptcy and then became the CEO. And you know, she was hit with an ignition switch problem, which had killed a number of people. I don't know, something less than 20. And she was hauled in front of Congress, and they really went after her and said, "You must have known about this." Said, "No, I didn't know about it. All these deaths were sent to our law department rather than to the design department, which I ran." Think about that. But and so she said, "We will fix the ignition switch problem, but you know, there's a deeper problem here. That's our culture." What kind of culture is this that would let that happen? I'm determined to change it and have General Motors cars be the safest cars on the road anywhere in the world. That commitment of hers to see that there was a bigger problem. And over the last 7, 8 years, she has indeed transformed the culture of a very old line company in General Motors. And now she's facing much more difficulties because she's had to close factories because automobile demand is way down. So she's converting one of those plants right now into a ventilator plant. They don't make ventilators, but they're going to figure out how to do it in the national interest. It's much like what Ford did during World War II when they converted their famous Willow Run Model T factory into making airplanes for the United States government. And by the end of that period, they were turning out one airplane every 36 minutes. It probably changed the course of the war. So think about that and your own case, and how are you facing the reality and not being in denial, but really facing, and have you contributed to the problems, or are you be part of the solution? So I'm urging you to be part of that solution. So Gail, do we have any questions? I hope you all, I really want to urge you to send in questions so we can get a real dialogue going, because I'm really curious as to what you're thinking about this. Had a meeting with a group of large company CEOs this morning, but I'm really curious what people here online have to say.
Here's one to get us started today, Bill. Due to the crisis, we've had to let go a lot of people and morale is low. I've been trying to get morale up, but nothing seems to work. Do you have any suggestions for what I might do and how I might encourage the other leaders in my company to do the same?
I go right to the core mission of your company, why you're in business, and I'd rally people around that. You don't have to be in the healthcare company. You can be a bank that's trying to rally people, trying to help people that are really hurting financially right now. You can be a consumer company that's trying to get goods they vitally need. And I think you ask everyone to sign on to that. Today, it's not about the bottom line profits. It's about serving your customers and your employees in the very best way you can in the midst of this crisis. And so I'd ask everyone to follow that. I did hear one CEO say this morning that people that weren't willing to get on board, they were going to have to let go. And he was going to choose at that basis because he had to cut some people back. But I would say encourage people to step up and lead. They can lead too, and they can get the job done. And then ask everyone in a crisis, you got to move quickly. You don't have time to analyze, plan, think about all those things. You've got to move right now. So that's what I would encourage them to do.
So Bill, one more question that just came in. What about individuals? What if you are an individual and not part of a large organization or company or even a small company? What might they do to really help build morale or face reality and prepare themselves and their own intimate community?
Well, I think people are getting very creative. The Zoom lines have been fantastic. You know, Harvard Business School shut down all of its in-person learning, and now it's 5,400 students online, well, 1,800 3 times a day. You know, bring your community together. We have a meeting at our couples group tonight. Bring your neighbors together this way and see what you can do to help your neighbors. Are there people that are shut in that you could drop something off at their door, some food or something to cheer them up, and people that can't get out that are older and really scared to go out? What can you do to help other people right in your own community? That's what I would look to. We need to build that sense of community. I think this is a great time to do that. We've fallen away from that. Many of the bastions of our community have kind of not used as much anymore. Even our churches of people, but you know, they're online churches, and we can be creative about how we can bring people together in community. And that's what I would suggest. You can help people right there. Bring your family members, people that care about you. Get on the phone and call friends. I had somebody just out of the blue just called me today. I hadn't talked to in 3 or 4 years. Hey, how are you doing, Bill? How are you holding up through this? I really appreciate that. So make those calls, get a list, and just get on the phone. You can do it. And I think this is very inspiring to you, and it's perhaps even more inspiring to the person you're reaching out to. Okay, let me go on then to if we could, to the second lesson. And that's, if you could put up that chart. This is lead authentically from your true north. What is your true north? Your true north is the core of who you are. Leadership is character, and true north represents the things at the core of your character, your beliefs, your values, and the principles you lead by. And I think this is a time to really be authentic. You'll see quickly who's authentic and who's not in this environment. And I think you should be that authentic leader. No pretenses. It doesn't matter how you dress, how you look, what your title is. You just got to be there for other people and really care. It's a time for compassion. It's a time for empathy. It's a time for reaching out to people and really being that strong person they can count on that can help them. You may be scared too, but you know there's always hope, and you can give them that hope. You can give them that encouragement. And I think that's really important that you do that. But you've got to do it from a grounded place. You know, it's not about making money. It's not about getting ahead in the world. This is how you lead in this environment, is your true north. So I'd like somebody I talked to the other day who just called me up, and Alex Gorski, who is CEO of Johnson & Johnson. You know, Johnson & Johnson's built around what they call the Credo. And the Credo has been very famous. It was written by the founder, General Johnson of Johnson & Johnson. And it says our first role is to serve our customers, the people, the mothers, fathers, patients, and doctors, all the people we serve. And he never forgot that. Now, J&J has a big drug business, medical device business, but they weren't really in the vaccines business. But they have a little vaccines company. He's putting everything behind that vaccines business. He's going to spend billions of dollars trying to find the right vaccine. You know, this crisis of COVID-19 won't fully go away until we can get people vaccinated, like we do with H1N1 and the SARS and the Ebola vaccines. So that's the only thing that's going to really turn around. And he is rushing now to do that. Just yesterday, he announced that he hoped to have it, he would have it in clinical trials by September and done by December. That's like a record time, and hope to be producing more than clinical, but actual commercial use in early January through February. And he's gearing up his production facilities right now. So he's really turned on, but he does that from this grounded place. And what we talked about was not making money. Yes, they're a profitable company. Yes, he didn't worry about his shareholder value. He only worried about this is an opportunity to really help people. And he's rallied this huge organization behind that cause. And he's got his team lined up to do that. And Alex is doing a wonderful job, I think, in focusing everyone around their true north. And it comes together in J&J's true north, which is captured in that credo of helping other people. And he's a true servant leader.
So
Okay.
speaking of true north, Bill,
Yes.
from an authentic spot, what would you recommend for how to deal with those who aren't authentic?
First of all, I wouldn't deal with them a lot. You know, people that are self-interested and only have time for themselves, we don't have any time for that today. That's a little harsh of me to say, but if they can't get on board and they're only thinking about themselves, I understand if they're thinking about themselves in terms of their health, in terms of their financial well-being, but that's not being inauthentic. That's natural. We're all thinking about that right now. But I would encourage them to be authentic, and I wouldn't take anything off of them. I would say, hey, let's get with the program here because we need your help. We need you to step up because we got a job to do. And there may be fewer of us to do it, but you know, this is a crisis and we need your help and we need you to get on board. You know, people that, for instance, don't want to socially distance. The statistics all show the states that socially distance. Minnesota is 50th among the 50 states in terms of number of cases per capita. Why? Because everyone's very respectful here of physical distancing. And I watch people when I'm walking down the sidewalk and they get off or I get off just to make sure that happens. So I said, tell everyone to get with it. And I would, frankly, I would try to surround yourself with people who are authentic, both at work and in your personal life. But that's my bias. So
One more question about True North and
Sure.
a person's True North. In such an unprecedented crisis, what do you do if your True North does not align with that of the topmost management of your company?
that's a problem. And I don't think you can change that top management right now. But you can lead in place. You can bloom where you're planted, so to speak. You can step up and lead right where you are. And by the way, your top management will see that. I know when I was in a senior role at head of Medtronic, we were looking for the informal leaders that stepped up. And when there was a crisis, we had a quality crisis, we had a design problem, we had a sales, I looked for those people that would step up in a crisis, not the people with the big titles. And those are people that got rewarded and recognized that we tried to honor. Maybe it was that designer back in the lab. Maybe it was that woman on the quality line, on the production line that would rather die than make a heart valve that failed and cost someone their life. It was the people who would drive for 100 miles at night to try to get someone a product the next morning so the doctor could start an emergency surgery. And so I think you want to encourage those people, and you can make a difference right where you are. And so you're not going to change. If your top management's not aligned with doing the right thing, you're not going to change them. Right now, make a difference. They'll see you, and they may be more authentic through this crisis than you think. It may change it. This crisis is going to change a lot of people and how they think. I can assure you, it's already changed a lot of the mavens on Wall Street. It's going to change a lot of people on Main Street. And I think it'll show who the real authentic leaders are. Okay, if it's okay, let's go on to the third lesson, if you will. If you want to put that up, please. Thanks. Organize your crisis leadership team. So your crisis team may be very different than your hierarchy. Who do you want to put on your team? How do you want to organize to get this job done? And I think that you need to think of it not in terms of who are the hierarchical leaders, but who are the people you want to get there. Remember Lloyd Blankfein, I was on the Goldman Sachs board, reorganized a whole team and a different team than he expected, of people who would really step up to do the job. Board members, members of management, he asked to do a lot of things and it really worked. And I think it's a different kind of team. You want to recognize the people that you can count on that are going to step up and use them. It doesn't matter if they're a first-line engineer or a scientist, they may be the most important people as you think about this. It could be someone who's just willing, has that energy to come up with a new business model, a new way of thinking about people instead of laying people off, maybe there's a way you can furlough people in a more humane way, or you can keep them on board at reduced salaries, whatever it might be. But you're going to find people in the organization that step up. So you got to organize your crisis team, which I think is quite different than your regular team. So someone who's done that very well is Omar Ishrak, the CEO of Medtronic. I talked to Omar several times. Turns out when this crisis hit, he was trapped out in his second home out in California. He stayed there, and I said, Omar, how are you running a company of 100,000 people, a global company of 100,000 people, from your small second home? He said, Bill, that's what we have to do. So he's got his colleague Jeff Martha, who will be his successor, handling things in Minneapolis. They talk 10 times a day, and they're doing the job. But more importantly, he's organized a tremendous crisis leadership team, because they have the world's largest ventilator plant. It's happens to be based in Ireland, came through an acquisition. It's about 1/100 of 1% of the revenue. So it's not a big business for them. They don't make much money on it. But you know, he's organized everything. You would think that's the only business they have. He's organized everything around it, because what's the critical shortage right now? Ventilators. And why are they so critical? Because that's what you need to save your life. And by the way, in a normal intensive care unit, people are on them for 2 or 3 days. With COVID-19, they may be on anywhere from 10 to 15 days. So you need a lot more ventilators. So he immediately went online and said, we'll double production. They'll double it again before they're done. But he's turned on other people. They had a lower end ventilator. It's not as hard to make, not as precision an instrument. And he open sourced that, took the radical view. Instead of trying to sell it himself, he said, anyone can have it. Here are the specifications. He put them out there. And now General Motors, as I mentioned earlier, is making that ventilator. And you see Tata Industries in India is going to be making it. Foxconn is a Chinese company based in Wisconsin. They're going to be making it. There's a firm in Canada that's going to be making it, Baylis Medical. And so they got lots of people doing this now, trying to get ventilators to people and moving really fast. He also got in touch personally with Elon Musk and said, I need your help. So Elon's going to make a critical component, the solenoid valve. That's a very precision part of the whole assembly. And he said the Defense Production Act helped him secure his supply line. So here you have Omar organizing a whole different team, calling upon the top scientists in Medtronic, the top action-oriented people that can transform manufacturing, people that can call in people from other facilities maybe in Ireland, can come in and work in this facility and set up a facility that's totally safe for all these employees to work in, so they're not risking themselves. But I just think it's beautiful how he's organized his team, all from California. And he did an interesting thing. Everyone says, how do you allocate these ventilators when somebody wants 30,000, somebody else wants 50? Well, he's got an organization he found at the University of Washington. He called on them to give them an algorithm to allocate to the people with the greatest medical need. He convinced FEMA, we can ship those directly to the hospital. Doesn't have to go through FEMA, be sold as masks are to a commercial distributor, and then in turn sold back to the states and then to the medical centers. No, we go directly to the medical center. He convinced them that was the right way to go because of the timeliness. You don't want ventilators sitting in a warehouse somewhere. You want them delivered directly to the site. So I think that's an example of someone that really knew how to organize his team. He knew his people on a global basis, and he really formed a global team to get this done. So, but remember, Omar is a person that, by the way, he was born in Bangladesh. He went to England at 18 to get his education. He got a PhD in electrical engineering, came here, worked in the ultrasound business. Eventually he was acquired by GE, worked there. And then he came to Medtronic in 2011. And he adopted the Medtronic mission totally of restoring people to full life and health. And he's totally committed. That's why he said, this is the most important thing we have to do. Yes, we'll sell a lot of other products as we go on. But right now, this is the most important thing we've got to get done. And to his credit, he's organized a giant organization to get behind it.
So Bill, is this a time for small business owners, not just the Medtronics of the world, but small business owners to take a look back and reflect and take time to think about how they're going to take action? Or is it the time to work harder and build more services and products into the future, including those like you just described that Medtronic is working on and other companies with them?
Well, tragically, Gail, for a lot of small businesses, the first thing you have to figure out is survival. And I've called a lot of people and I said, check your liquidity, go to your bank, get every dollar you can, and try to collect all the revenues you can and watch your payables because you have to watch your cash. And a lot of small businesses are not going to make it. And a number of organizations, of course, went to the U.S. and American organizations went to the U.S. government and to get financial support to get these loans. One organization I'm on the board of got a $3 million loan, and they're looking at how they can structure their employee base so that that loan gets converted to a grant. And so I think that's the first thing you have to do as a small business owner. Sadly, people are predicting that 40% of the restaurants will never come back to be in business. And so I think people have to look at, how are we going to stay in business? Do you have to go into the takeout business? Do you go into the home delivery business? Home food delivery is a huge business all of a sudden overnight. So how are you going to have to adapt to the changing conditions? And I think that's really critical for what you do, because things are tough. And so I would be planning the future, and I would think about, when you come out of this crisis, I've been thinking about this and writing about it, things are going to look very different than they look going into it. And so maybe people don't need office space. Maybe you have no one working. Maybe they work from home, or you have a small shared office. But you need to think about how things are going to change, and how your revenue model is going to change, how your business model is going to change. That's the first thing I would. This is true for large companies too. It's not in any way connected to small companies. They have to watch their liquidity and their cash position just as much. I talked to a very large company today, and he said, we went out and got a tremendous loan for a 10-year loan for 2% interest, and we didn't need the money now, but we might need in the future, because he's in making consumer hard goods that people may not buy. So I think that's what you have to do. But yeah, I would be thinking ahead to the future, as well as your survival in the short term, and then think very carefully about, what's the market going to look like post COVID-19. I can tell you it's not going to look anything like it did going into it. So don't assume that we're going to go back the way we were. We're not going back. It's going to be a while before people are going to sit in a soccer stadium with 40 or 50,000 people elbow to elbow. So we got to think about that. The airlines may have to go every other seat. It's not clear. So we need to get a lot more epidemiological data. We need more scientific data. We need to understand how this virus spreads, and then do the things necessary for our organization to be successful. Any other questions?
No, I think we'll have you keep going. I mean, there's lots of great questions, but I want to be sure you get to all 7 points. So why don't you keep going, and I'll drop them in as I can.
We're right on schedule. Okay, well, if you put up, Avery, the next chart, which is make hard decisions addressing the root cause of the problem. Oftentimes in engineering, you'll find a glitch in your products. I'm trained as an engineer, and people want to just fix that problem, put a Band-Aid over it, but they may fix one problem and create 2 more. So I think it's really important you don't Band-Aid the problem. You get to the root cause of the problem. What is the deeper problem we're dealing with here? And I think you have to do that, and you're going to have to make some very hard decisions. Let me give you an example. A woman I was talking to just this morning, I admire her a great deal, Corey Berry, who's the new CEO. She's been in the job, I think, just not even a year as CEO, and replacing Hugh Berry-Joly, and who's still her chairman. But Corey just had to lay off 51,000 people. Think about that. Think about the pain associated with it. You can see the pain in her face today when I talked to her. And yet she did it with great courage, with great compassion, great empathy. A lot of these are temporary and part-time employees. They found out that some of those employees could actually do better if they were laid off, and they picked up the government support for laid off people. And so they tried to structure the whole thing and keep as much of their organization together as they could. They had 125,000 people. But the reality she's facing, and she made that hard decision, is that people, their business has done very well on people ordering online. And when Hubert took over 7 years ago, they didn't have much of an online business. He's made it a great business. I can compete with Amazon. But, she's faced that reality. And she's faced other realities, that they have a fantastic in-home service business, but they can't go into the home. People don't want people in their homes right now. So they've had to suspend that. But now they're trying to, how can they do that? How can they get back into the home? What will be the next phase to get this crew out there that can really help people that need help inside their home? How can they get people safely to come into their stores? How can they set up entryways and spaces so there's not a lot of crowding, and people feel comfortable, and people wearing masks or gloves or whatever is necessary until we're through this crisis and fully have a vaccine? We can get it behind us. But she's also recognizing that structure may change. People may find we're very comfortable ordering online and coming to the store and picking it up. And no touch service, and the person just open your trunk and somebody puts it in your trunk and you're off on your own. You have that television set or whatever, that personal computer. By the way, a lot of people, the business is really hot right now, are laptops and PCs. Everyone wants them. Everyone should have them. They're working from home and they need them. And companies that are wise are paying to have their people fully equipped and fully wired, because the workday is going from 8:30 to 5 to 24/7. You got to be wired all the time. You have to set your own boundaries with your family. That says you work all that time, but you do have to set clear boundaries yourself. But I think that's going to be the way of the world as we go forward. But I really admire Corey and the way she handled this and getting to the root cause of the issues. And that was, you have challenges right now today and people going in the stores and going into the home. But she faced that issue, and I think she's doing a lot of online service as well, where you can call people up and talk them through it, even if you can't go into the home. So great admiration for her. Some questions, Gail, about this one?
Yes. Bill, as a leader, which strengths do you consider to be the most important right now? Empathy, communication, trust, humility, transparency. Which ones would you share with us?
These questions are tough. I don't really like saying there's one thing. Leadership is character. Leadership reveals your character. Leadership in a crisis reveals your character. And so a couple of you have asked questions about what if your top management, well, they may not have the character that represent what you want, if that's really true, or maybe they will transform in a crisis and you'll find they have a lot of character. It requires courage. Corey Berry, who's the example I just gave you, had enormous courage to take this on. Omar Ishrak showed tremendous courage, just like Mary Barra did. And so I think and third, I would say compassion, empathy, compassion. I know there's a technical difference between the two, but I think we as leaders need to show great compassion for people that are fearful, who are sick, who are ill, who may die, or when they do die, their loved ones, showing compassion for loved ones. Compassion for people that are scared, that don't have the money, aren't sure that I can get through this. They're afraid to go outside their house. They can't get any food in. Maybe there's no food delivery in their neighborhood from a grocery store. So I think leaders today, great leaders, will show that level of compassion. So character, courage, and compassion. Got another one?
Bill, can you talk a little bit about leading at home and at work? And how do we best focus and deliver for work and family?
Well, I think you have to set boundaries. You're not traveling as much as you were. I talked to a woman the other day who works for a French company. She's based in Boston. I said, how much do you travel? She said, 70% of the time. I said, are you married? Yes, I've got a husband and 2 kids at home, or 10 and 12. And my husband travels 70% of the time. I said, wow. I said, why can't you do that all by Zoom calls? Why do you have to do it online? Why do you have to fly off to Singapore for a planned meeting? This is crazy. Companies, big global companies that send 10, 12 people over for a planned meeting in Korea or in Shanghai. I think we have to really rethink how we live our lives. But I would say if you're working from home, you better set your day up so you're putting some clear boundaries. The work you're going to do, have your list of the things you want to get done today, the calls you want to make, the online calls like this one that you want to participate in. Set some time aside every day for exercise. We started a group of CEOs of what they do and take care of themselves. If you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be good to anyone else. So I would, Gail, just morph off a little bit and say there are 5 principles of self-care that I think everyone needs to follow. Number 1, I think you have to eat healthy. You have to eat healthy foods. You want to be careful not to, imbibe and too much alcohol or smoking to relieve your stress or any kind of recreational drugs. I would say that's critical. You need 7 to 8 hours sleep every night, closer to 8 than 7. I think you need to have at least 30 minutes exercise every day. Get out and walk, do something to get some fresh air. I know in New York, anyone here from New York, it's going to be very hard because everything's closed. I really empathize with my friends in New York. But if you live anywhere else in the country, find a safe place to get out and just walk, exercise. And I think, you need to do something to relieve your stress. I've been a meditator since 1975. I would encourage you to consider meditation and or prayer or a quiet time or something to relieve your stress. Maybe a few laughs at a funny movie. A lot of people are watching movies tonight, today, much more than they did before. But I think you need to have those times and set your day up so you're doing all of those things And you can't work all day long. You can't work 18 hours a day. If you do, you'll burn out. You won't be good to anyone. And keep your health going. And these things I just suggested, I think will really help your health. I think they're all critical to maintain a healthy lifestyle. And if you don't have your health, frankly, as my father used to say, you don't really have anything. So that healthy lifestyle is critical. So I encourage you to engage in those practices, and then make sure part of your day is spent in community with your family. If you don't have a family, you're with friends, or you're on the phone. I'm talking about on a Zoom call. People are having cocktail. A number of CEOs are saying now they're having coffee hours with the CEO. And again, know a lot of people they didn't know before. They're having a cocktail hour late in the day. Something where you're connecting with people all around the country, around the world. And I think that'll give you a much better feeling, enable you to get through the fear and uncertainty that all of us feel. We don't know what's coming. And that's why I say we have to prepare for the worst, but then hope for the best, and see the light at the end of the tunnel of how we're going to come out of this. Okay, well, let's go on. I think as a leader, you need to lead from the front. You need to be out there with the people. Now, somebody say, I can't do that. I'm staying at home. I get it. Well, then do something where you're doing something online, but you need to be engaged with the people actually doing the work. I would say, forget about the hierarchy. Stop going through chain of command and all that. Get out with the people. And I think that's really critical. If you're running a factory, you need to be out there with the people, even if it's at risk to you, because they're all putting themselves at risk. So put on your mask, put on your gloves, be protected, but get out with the people. Let them know you're with them. Those are the people I really admire, the people that are out there on the front lines with people. And I think there's no substitute. People know if you're there or not. And you maybe only say, oh, I've got a big company and we're in a lot of different places. Yeah, I only had a chance to go to one. Hey, everyone knows that, knows you're out there. Be at the scene, try to help people when they're scared, they don't know what to do. Give them that reassurance, that sense that you as a leader, you have their back, you have their support. If somebody is sick, go and make a call up their spouse or call that person and say, what can I do to help? How can we get them help? Make a couple of phone calls. Maybe you have to get them equipment that'll save their life. You have to make a few phone calls to get them a ventilator. Maybe they need masks, whatever it is. I think you can do that and you can really make a difference, but you've got to be on the front. And I think you lead from the front. A lot of leaders say, I lead underneath, I lead from behind, I let everyone else do the work. That's fine in a normal time. That's not okay in this time. You have to get out and be in front. So I'd like to give you an example of one of my former students. His parents immigrated to the United States. He grew up in Queens, New York. His name is Saqib Rahim. He's a medical doctor, and he spent 7 years getting his medical degree and an MBA at the same time. He was my student as an MBA. And he then worked in medicine for a number of years, got hired away by Aetna, the insurance company, and is an executive with Aetna. But he's maintained his professional practice as an internist. And he's not an emergency room doctor. But when the COVID crisis broke in Queens, it's very tough there. He went to the front lines and he worked as a doctor. I got a note from the other day, and it was very moving. He said he had just completed 33 consecutive days, 16 hours a day working in the COVID group, on a COVID department. And he said he sent a picture out of an empty bed, and he said, it's so heartbreaking. He said, every day the past week, one of my patients has died. I did everything I could to save them. And he was very moving to me, because he said, I had to tell a wife that I had to go in and tell her husband, because she couldn't come in to see him, she was at home, that she loved him. And even though he was very near death and eventually did die. And that's the kind of frontline service. The real heroes here are the healthcare heroes. And since the Vietnam War, we've really honored our heroes in Iraq and Afghanistan and other wars. But now I think we're recognizing the real heroes are these frontline people. I have a son and daughter at the medical center at UCSF on a daily basis. They're not on the COVID ward, but they're doing a lot of medicine. They're doing their medical work, emergency surgery, because cancer can't wait for COVID to be over. My son's a cancer doctor. My daughter-in-law does gynecology, and these procedures a lot of people need emergency care right now. But I think our healthcare workers really, and I'm just talking about the doctors, I'm talking about all the people on the front line, the nurses, the orderlies, the people that are just strained and stressed. They see people dying, and it's almost like working in a war-torn hospital. And a lot of times they can't get the equipment they need. My daughter-in-law sent and said that even UCSF, one of the great medical institutions of the world, that somebody was wearing gas masks. They couldn't get an adequate mask. Mayo's had to put out a call for more masks because we have a very mixed up, unusual system of how you get product. I won't go into all that, but let me tell you, it's not the way anyone would organize a business. How you get product from 3M through FEMA to a commercial distributor to the state to the great Mayo Clinic. And they've had to lay off a lot of people too because the normal business isn't coming in. But I go back to Saki Ibrahim because I just found it was really very moving. And he said one day he was with a patient and he said, the patient pulled off his oxygen mask and said, "Doc, tell me, how are you doing?" That kind of compassion for his doctor. He said his concern caught me off guard. And it made me tear up, but for that moment, it made me feel a bit lighter. He said, you know, it's so hard to share the bad news with people. But here's a guy in the front lines, and I really admire what he's doing. He doesn't have to do that. He could be over at Aetna and doing his regular job, but he's on the front lines every day. And we really have to honor the people that have done that. Someone suggested a day that we have a healthcare workers day, just like we have a day to honor Dr. Martin Luther King. We need to have a day to honor our healthcare workers. So, any questions on this one, Gail? Leading from the front, being on the front lines?
Yes, because being on the front lines means you're taking a risk, sometimes
Yep.
personal in the case of your former student and sometimes professional. So can you weigh in on managing this risk, particularly in light of things like the dismissal of Captain Brian Crozier?
Okay. Before I go to Crozier, let me say, personally, minimize the risk, wear a mask, don't be proud, you know, wear gloves, you know, be careful what you touch. Carry a bottle of this stuff wherever you go. Wash your hand. I wash my hand. I feel like I'm anal retention. I'm washing my hand 15 times a day. You know, even when I think I'm totally clean. Clean off the counters. Get some Lysol if you can get it. You can find it at the store. Clean it off every time, everywhere you go. Lysol down your laptop here, your computer face, whatever it is. Minimize the risk. If you're around COVID people that are addicted, be careful. Stay at a distance. Don't get too close. And be very, very careful. So if you get it, you can't help anyone. So you just have to make sure that you're keeping healthy while you're trying to help other people. And that's why I use the healthcare workers. I admire them. So now let's take Captain Crozier. This is a tough call. I worked for the Secretary of the Navy. I was the only civilian's office when I was in my 20s. And Navy, when you're captain of a ship, you're fully responsible. He's got the most prestigious part of the Navy, running an aircraft carrier. He's got 5,000 people on this ship. I can tell you that the working level men and women are bunked very close together, cheek to jowl, very one next to each other, foot to head. I can tell you it's a very close quarters. And he sensed this was spreading on a ship. By the way, when they later tested people, they found 600 people had the coronavirus. 600 people out of 5,000. And so his admiral wouldn't let him come into shore. And he was desperate to do something. So yeah, he went out of the chain of command. He sent an email to say, I need help. And this eventually got in a newspaper and the Secretary of the Navy, against the advice of the Chief of Naval Operations, who's the top Navy admiral, and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, who I've met, Admiral Milley, said, do not do that. Do not fire him. You do not replace him. You should set up a commission and maybe at worst you reprimand him or something like that. They didn't tell him what to do, but they said, set up an inquiry, find out what's going on. And his first concern was his people. And I must say, I really admire someone like that. Your first concern has got to be the people who work for it. If it cost him his career, okay, he can walk away proud. And the way those people cheered when he came on board, when he left the ship, they were all standing and cheering because he knew they had their best interest at heart. If you're going to war and you run a Navy carrier, you better make darn sure your captain is concerned about you and not himself or herself. So I have great admiration for a leader like that takes care of the people for whom he or she is responsible. And that's all of our role. And I'm so proud of today's CEOs. They're stepping up and doing, no matter what they went outside, what the government tells them, they're taking care of their people first. And good for them. And no one can order them to bring their people back to work. No one can order them to reopen their store, their restaurant, their bar, or whatever. they are going to take, or their school. I just saw a shocking thing online today with a doctor I thought I respected say, you know, I saw this article in Lancet. Well, if 2 or 3% of the people died, I suppose that's some people would see that a reasonable trade-off. Come on, are you kidding me? If you had a plant with 1,000 workers and you lost 20 or 30 to COVID-19 because you didn't take responsibility, no, you have to make sure your people are safe. Rule number one. Okay. Any other questions, Gail? Sorry to get a little worked up about that one.
Thanks, Bill. I just want to be sure I correct my introduction of Captain Crozier. It's actually Brett and not Brian. So my apologies to those of you who know better, and thank you for your correction. So Bill, this gets a little more personal. So have you ever been faced in a situation as a leader where you had to weigh that risk and step forward and lead from the front as the examples you've already given?
I remember early in my career when I was running the microwave oven business, we had a huge factory, and the quality manager came to my office and, Bill, the factory's on fire. So he said, you got to get out of your office. So I followed everyone else who went outside in the parking lot. Fire department had not arrived yet. And I said, what's going on in there? Are any of our employees in there? And people said, yeah, there's 3 of our employees inside. So I just went in the factory, found out here are these 3 people who are working really hard trying to get the fire out. Eventually they got it out and the fire department arrived about 5-10 minutes later. But, and I watched a lot of people standing out like they were scared to death on the parking lot. I just think you've got to dive in and act. You know, you've got to be a part of the action. And I've done that going into factories at 3 in the morning. We didn't know if we could start up our products. So we weren't sure they were safe. We can start a production line when they got together 6:30 the next morning. I've gone with Medtronic. I saw over 700, between 700 and 1,000 procedure where I'd gone up, put on the greens, and to go in with the doctor. I didn't actually do anything, but I observed these procedures. I watched a man die on the table. I watched our products not do well, and I watched our products save a lot of lives. And so I felt like being there was just critical. And there have been painful times. One of our employees walked off a cliff when she was on vacation and died. And someone said, you got to call her mother. I said, gee, I don't want to call her mother. I don't know her mother. I've never met her. She's somewhere in California. I said, no, I just have to do it. So I picked up the phone and called her and told her how sorry I was and tried to show some compassion. I never met the employee or the mother, but I think you have to do that. People go through tough times, and it's up to you to do that. I remember I had one of our top executives that didn't think she could continue because she really wants more time with her family and she wanted to work part-time, and so she did, and that was okay. So I just think we have to try to be engaged with people on a very personal basis. And yeah, those times. I remember one of my employees, I don't want to go into all that, but somebody was actually murdered at Honeywell, and it was very painful to get involved, but you got to be there and you got to show up. And there's no substitute for showing up. As Woody Allen said, you know, showing up is 85% of the challenge. You want to go on, Gail?
Yeah, why don't you keep going, Bill?
Okay, we're
Great
right on
coming
schedule
in.
here. Okay, the next one is, if you put it up, Avery, it's communicating truthfully and transparently, number 6 down here. You know, people want to hear the real truth. They want to know what's going on. And I talked to the CEO of the world's largest private company this morning. You know what he said? He said, I have to be brutally honest with people and tell them what the risks are, what we're doing, how we're adjusting. Our business is changing dramatically. It happened to be in the food business. He said, you know, our food service business, we sell to restaurants, is dried up, but the consumer business is booming. People desperately we need to convert factories all over the world. This is happening all over the world. People want to have more food at home and less food in restaurants, but we have to make those changes quickly. He's had to be brutally honest with people about the changes we're going to have to make. But at the same time, we have to have hope. We're going to get through this. We're going to be a better company coming out of it. We'll be trimmer and fitter, and we'll be more focused on what's really important. And it's that kind of commitment that I think is really critical. But he's a guy that is totally truthful, totally honest, very authentic. Dave McLennan at Cargill. And very transparent with people. Tell him what he's feeling. Share that, hey, you know, we're concerned, but we're going to get through this. We're going to pull together. And you always want to give people hope. So he sits down every Sunday night, he says, and sends out a 2-minute video on Monday morning to tell people what's going on, what's happening. But he said, I want to close with a note of hope so that people see we're going to get through this. And here's how we're going to come through it stronger than we were before. So a very authentic leader to do that. And I think you have to be transparent with people about what's happening. You can't fool people. It all comes out. In today's world of very open media and social media, it will come out. So you might as well tell them. People want to hear it from you. They don't want to read it in the newspaper. So be honest and open and transparent with people. But find ways to communicate. One CEO said he had a coffee hour and he's meeting all kinds of people he never even met online in a Zoom call. They can all come in. So he's got 100 people. Maybe he hadn't even met them. He has chances that are scattered all over South America and the Caribbean. So very healthy. And I think that's what we want to do. So let me give you an example. A couple of people. Now, these people are actually government employees that are under enormous pressure right now because of the political tension of what's going on. That's Dr. Anthony Fauci, who, by the way, is 79 years old. He could have retired 15 years ago, full pension and everything, and he's still working. And I talked to a friend of mine who's known him for 30 years. He said, here's the most authentic guy. He's been through every vaccine crisis there is. And Dr. Deborah Birx, who came in from South Africa, where she was based, to come in and help work through this crisis. And they're on TV every night, and they tell the truth. They communicate honestly, openly. Then there's a lot of pressure. There's been a lot of talk about using hydroxychloroquine. No one knows if it's going to work, and they're saying be cautious because we don't know. And yes, this drug we know could kill people if it's got too much dosage. We don't know if it'll work for coronavirus. We do know it'll work for lupus, and it'll work as anti-malarial, but we don't know if it'll work for this. And so we have to find out. We have to do the test. They're staying true. They're grounded in a set of principles of do no harm, which is the first rule of medicine. And these people, like I say, under a lot of pressure, the white lights in the White House briefing room every day, get asked a ton of questions by reporters. They never seem rattled. They never overreact. They just say, here's what we're going to do. Here's what we've learned today. Here's what we still have to find out. Here's how long. As Fauci says, it's going to take a year to get a vaccine. So he's not trying to kid anyone. Oh, we can have one by the summer. No, we're not going to have one by the summer. Could be 18 months. It's going to take time. We don't have that vaccine. We don't even know how to characterize this virus yet. We're learning. We're trying to get all the information we can. And they know that every minute that goes by that people are dying, the economy's being shut down, but they're saying it does no good to open up the economy if people don't feel safe to go back to work, don't feel safe to go to a shopping mall, don't feel safe to get on an airplane. People need to have that sense of safety. And so I admire both Deborah Birx and Tony Fauci for what they're doing.
So
Any
Bill,
questions,
how much
Gail?
is too much to share? Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you, but I thought I had my opening. How much is too much to share? So authenticity is important, and I love the example of the CEO of General Mills, but as leaders, we also need to make sure we aren't creating hype. So
Creating what?
Hype, or making people more anxious by sharing too much of our own personal concerns.
I don't think we make them more anxious by doing that. I think by sharing, being human. They want to know today, people are only going to follow a leader if they think they're human. The millennials in particular, people wonder why, oh, these millennials. Yeah, if they don't think you're real as a leader, if you're in a leadership role and they don't think you're real, they're not going to want to work with you. They're not going to follow you. So I don't think it's too much. I don't think you want to go overboard. I don't think you want to say, oh, it's going to be terrible and all this people are going to die. I think you want to stay in character and stay very authentic. And that's being open and honest with people, telling them the truth. They know when you're dissembling. They know when you're not telling them the truth. And so I think it's essential that we do that. Okay. Any other questions on that one, Gail? Excuse me, got a little cough.
Sure. True North implies that some level of ethical base, implies that there is some level of ethical base. How can we as leaders help to re-inject ethics into our society? And how does one counteract the corrupting influence of money?
Oh boy, that's a good question. Money is corrupt, and the more money you have, the more corrupted you're likely to be. Now, I'd hate to say it, because people whose goal in life is money, I'll tell you one thing, regardless of their religious beliefs, you can't take it with you. The only thing you take with you, what you leave behind, the impact you've had on other people. And they're going to all remember, did you step up? Were you a servant leader in this time? Or were you looking out for yourself? And everyone's going to remember that. And so I think ethics starts at home. It starts right with you in your own family, in your own workplace, with a small group of people you work with. And then you can talk about the broader ethics. It's hard to work for a company you feel is not ethical. But right now, I focus on what's close in. And I would surround myself with other ethical people. I think it rubs off on you if you're working with unethical people, people that would do anything to make money, to cut corners and things like that. I would not go there. And so I would just be very wary about that and work with people that really want the best for everyone. And you'll find those real people are real heroes. You don't think Saki Ibrahim is working in the New York Presbyterian hospitals to make money, do you? He could make a lot more money working for Aetna. No, he's working there to save people. That's his calling. And so that should be your calling. Everyone's going to notice that. They're going to remember how you were at this time. Yeah, you're going to lose money in the stock market. If you got money in the stock market, you're going to lose money. It's going to go down. That's the reality. It'll come back up, by the way. You just have to bear with it. People that don't have money, think about all the people that can't put food on the table tonight. Think of all the people that who didn't have $400 to their name when this crisis started and can't pay the bills and are in real trouble. They don't have money to go to the grocery store. And those are the people we need to have some empathy for and think about in this crisis. And I think your ethical behavior is really going to be shown by how you treat other people in this crisis, and the humanity, the compassion that you show for other people will really test you. Okay, shall we go on? Let's go on to number 7, if we could, Avery. The last of the 7 lessons I have, which is anticipate and adapt to the new normal. This may be the hardest to do and the most important of all of them because you don't know what the new normal is going to be. The only thing I can tell you, the new normal, you can take it off now, just go to the video. The new normal is not going to look anything like the old normal. We're not going back to the way it was last fall. Like that, I can tell you. With crowded restaurants, people sitting right close to each other, it's not going to be like that. It's going to be a different world. But your company's business model is going to have to change. How's it going to change? If you're selling products in a store, you're going to have to go a lot more online. If you're in the apparel business, do people even want to go in a dressing room to try something on? They're fearful that they'll have, the virus maybe infected. So are they going to want to try and clothes somebody else try it on? So you're going to have to really think through what is the business model that's going to cause us to win, and how are we going to have that touch in a different environment. There's what I would call 3 phases. Right now we're in the shelter in place phase. It'll probably go on. New York just announced extension to May 15th. It'll probably go on 3 or 4 more weeks. Then we're going to go into phase of trying to restart the economy. And as the Wall Street Journal said 2 days ago, it's going to be fitful, it's going to be partial, and it's going to be slow. So rather than think we're going to turn the economy on like a rocket and everyone's going to take off, we're all going to go to crowded movie theaters and crowded sporting arenas, it's not going to happen. So how does our business model have to change? Maybe sporting events have to make more money online. Did that take away from the game? Maybe the Guthrie Theater has to have people in every other seat. Maybe the airlines can't fill the middle seat. I think that new normal we need to think through. But if you go there with your company and you figure that out, you're going to be the winner. It's like Brian Cornell saw at Target. He put out $350 million for his people. By the way, Doug McMillan at Walmart put out $550 million for his people. Both of them stepped up. This is back early in March 13th. They stepped up and did the right thing by their people. They wanted the first line people, and I would put the emphasis on the first line people. We're underpaying an awful lot of first line people in this country. I think it's a tragedy. Whether they're school teachers, firemen, whether they're healthcare workers, nurses, whether they're production workers, whether they're flight attendants, all the people on the front line, to me, are way underpaid for their value. We got too many middle managers, too many consultants. I don't want to offend any of you, but I think we got to get the focus back on the people doing the work. And companies are going to figure out that's the new normal. And I can have 20 direct reports. Why can't you have 20? If you have competent people, you don't have to have 5 or 7 or 8. No, you can have a very flat organization. You can be closer to your customers. But I think anticipating this new normal and then moving to it and restructuring. A lot of companies are now talking about restructuring now to get ahead of the game. How's it going to look when we come out? They're going to head and restructure. They're not going to think the business is coming back. It's not going to come back the way it was. It's going to be very different. Behaviors are going to be changed. This is the most impactful crisis of our lifetime. And it's not going to end quickly. And it will impact people, our children, and young people are going to impact the rest of their lives. This is going to have a huge impact on their lives. So think about all those things about how your organization can change to adapt to the new normal, to figure out what that new normal is, and then try to go there and adapt to it. How's the workplace changed? Can people work more from home? Will that take care of some of the daycare problems? How's that going to work? It will help with two-career families, have some empathy for that, which we haven't had, and make sure people are fairly paid. I'd rather have half as many people and make sure they're well paid than I would have people, everyone, you're paying minimum wage or not a living wage. Let's put it this way, you're not paying them a living wage. And I think you ought to look very seriously at any business models that rely on people making less than $15 an hour. How would you like to live on $7.25 an hour as an American? I mean, it couldn't be done, no matter where you live in the country. So think about how you're going to really help people and anticipate that new normal. So let me just give you an example of someone who has done that. Ken Fraser, who is the CEO of Merck. Now, Ken is the grandson of a slave. Most of you won't believe he's the grandson, not the great-grandson. And he grew up in poverty in Philadelphia. And he got a scholarship to Penn State. Once he went on to Harvard Law School and worked for a law firm, went to work for Merck, and eventually became CEO. Shortly after he did, he realized that everyone was saying, oh, drug companies can buy their drugs from little companies. They don't need these research, just as inefficient. He went the other way. He said, Merck will never spend less than $8 billion a year on research. In fact, they're spending well over 10 now. And he recognized he had way too many people and he was going to have to make a very painful adjustment so he could put his money into research. So he had to let a number of people go, but he made that adjustment, changed his business model to focus on life-saving drugs, not just me-too drugs. So he came up with a drug called Keytruda, which is a life-saving drug, has changed people's lives with cancer. And one of the people who have been changed is former President Jimmy Carter, who was dying of brain cancer. And he got Keytruda, and he's alive and well 3 years later. And it's amazing. The man's 93 years old, and he's still going strong. So, and still working in Habitat for Humanity sites, believe it or not. You probably don't believe that, but it's true. And so Ken adapted. And right after this after this crisis hit, he realized the importance, as I mentioned earlier, he realized the importance of getting antibiotics out there. And he went out and did that and converted and put a tremendous amount of emphasis on doing that, because first of all, he stayed in the business when he couldn't make any money at it. And then I talked to him shortly after the crisis hit about 4 weeks ago. He said, I've only got 300 people out of 600 in the plant there. And I said, really? They're all afraid to come in? He said, no. The problem is that they don't have daycare for their kids. The school's all been closed just this week. So he had to adjust to that. He said, most everyone's gone out of the antibiotic business. You don't make any money in it. But he said, we decided to stay in because, you don't die of coronavirus, you die of pneumonia. And if you don't have our antibiotics, you're going to be very much at risk. So here's a man that focused on what was really important to help people. And part of that came out of his background. He's a servant leader. He's a man of enormous courage, enormous character, and enormous compassion, to go back to those three words. So someone I really admire that knows how to adapt to what's really important and to lead his company in the right direction and to make painful decisions. In some ways, Ken represents all the things on this page, because he's had to make those painful decisions to transform and restructure the company to be effective in doing what it did best. And he said, we're basically a medical science company, and that's where we're going to put our emphasis. And we hope we'll come up with things, and indeed they did. Okay. So Gail, some more questions?
Well, Bill, we're actually at the top of the hour,
Okay.
and I've asked Katie to jump in and do the close for those of you who in attending this who have to get off at the top of the hour. But we can stay on a few more minutes afterward.
Yeah, I've got a little close too. I'd
that.
like to take a minute or so here.
Great. I'll get off. Let you do that, Bill.
Okay. Well, some of you asked some really good questions. I'm sure there's a lot more. We'll try to answer those. But I think the thing I would like to say to you is, as an individual leader, now is your time to lead. You don't need a title to lead. You can step up and lead right where you are right now. See a need, step up and lead, and make a difference. Don't wait for somebody to tap you on the shoulder. You can say, just ask, how can I help? And dive in and help. Okay. Gail, who's on the other line, she decided she actually likes to knit. Okay. She made masks for all of us because you can't buy masks around here. So I have a mask from Gail. I don't have it on right now, but she said, okay, I'll go do that. You just ask, how can I help? And you can make a real difference. So this is the real test to your leadership, but it's also your opportunity to show your leadership. And if you lead authentically, you follow your true north, and you are compassionate, you lead from your character, which is your true north, and you have a sense of courage to take a risk, make a difference in the world, you'll be a great leader. So I want to thank you for coming in today. I hope we can meet in person sometime soon. By the way, I don't work for Multiversity, but Multiversity is sponsoring this. They have some amazing programs on the most amazing campus I've ever seen down in Scotts Valley, just south of San Jose, California. Amazing leadership programs that we'll now hear about. But I just want to encourage you to come to the leadership programs at Multiversity, because they will be transformative for you and for your life, and you'll be glad you did. I've got one I teach called True North Leadership, and I'd love to have you come next October. But there are a lot of programs they have that are just fantastic. So take it away if you would.